We'll get started in about 1 minute. Boy, they've got me turned up loud, don't they? I feel like Moses. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, whew, yeah. Thanks for coming close and making this a little easier. I was having trouble hearing questions the other day, and I think maybe this will work a little better. And also, it's just a little bit more intimate. Yeah. Well, I guess let's begin. I don't know if you want me to talk anymore, really. Most of you have been here at least twice and heard me say what I've got to say, and I'm talking about this creed. And what I plan to do is just kind of walk you through how you get from Paul's text in Galatians to the creed, and how you do the exegesis to get to walk the Pauline additions back and reveal the creed. But I'm just guessing that maybe you have more important things on your mind than those little exegetical moves that I was going to show you. And so, first of all, are there people who have not yet didn't come to the weekend events and would like a little refresher? Charles Puska's here is one, an old scholar, friend of mine, by the way, who worked for Fortress Press for many years, a wonderful scholar. He's here this morning. Others, yeah, of course. So okay. Excuse me. So, what I've been talking about is this text that I read for you this morning from Galatians, and scholars think that it contains a creed, an ancient baptismal creed, actually, because there's a little reference to baptism in the framing that Paul gives the thing. And so it goes, as I said this morning, the creed originally probably went like, "You are all children of God." Literally it says sons of God, but I'm just adjusting a little bit there. But that first phrase is kind of interesting. You are all sons of God. And you have to realize that before followers of Jesus began to say that he is the Son of God, they were saying, we are the sons of God. Sometimes they do say literally children of God, tekna theou, so there's some back and forth like that. But that was a self-designation for early followers of Jesus. So that's just a note. So for you are all sons or children of God. And then the next line that is in Paul's presentation of the thing is not part of the creed. That's the part that says, "For as many of you as were baptized have put on Christ." So that's Paul's addition to the creed. He's reminding them that this was a baptismal creed, and remember that when you were baptized, we might have said this. Okay. So you are all children of God. Then it goes, there is no Jew or Greek. And from a Jewish point of view, that's the basic distinction between us and them. The ethnic other is in the East. In the Roman East, it's the Greek. More broadly, it would be the Gentiles. Sometimes Paul will say in Romans, there's no Jew or Gentile. Same thing. So you are all children of God. There is no Jew or Greek. There is no slave or free. That in antiquity, in Roman antiquity, is the basic class distinction. Roman law is divided, for example. These laws apply to free people. These apply to slaves. So that's the basic class distinction. Not unbridgeable, but very difficult to bridge. Okay? There is no slave or free. There is no male and female. There's gender. Right? The gender distinction. And that part of the creed, by the way, switches it up a little bit. It says there is no male and female, not man or woman. And that male and female little switch up ties the creed to Genesis and the creation story of Adam in Genesis 1, verse 27, where the text says that God created him, male and female. He created him. That's how the rabbis translated it. And so it may have originally made a bit of reference to a kind of original androgyne, but in the creed it's probably just simply referencing the fact that like slave and free, male and female is a dyad in which there's a power differential. Male, female, right? So these are all designations that ultimately result in power differential and the ability to look at someone else and say, you're fine, but you're not us. There's no Jew or Greek, that's ethnicity. There's no slave or free, that's class. There is no male and female, that is gender. For you are all one. And there's just one thing to say about that, and that is that the creed doesn't say for you are all the same. And if it did, I would probably just change it, right? Because it would be less true then. We are not all the same. We know this, and I think that most of us have probably stopped saying that. We are all very, very different. We come from different places. We have different experiences. We come from histories long buried that result in who we are. So we are all different. But that does not mean that we cannot have a sense of solidarity. And that's why I think the Creed says, for you are all one. And Paul was dealing with people, as you know this morning, Jews and Greeks who did not see themselves as the same. But he thought the Creed could help him convince them to be in solidarity with one another in a very difficult time. So that's really enough of that's the gist of what I've been saying for 2 days now. And so what I wanted to do is to ask you to, give me your heartfelt thoughts about this and what you think that the importance or the problems with it might be. And you also heard me this morning, so you know kind of where I'm going with this, generally speaking, why I think it's important. I think that we are, I hope you agree, that we are in very troubled times, and in some sense frightening times, not least because every time we turn on the news, there is more and more frightening material before us. I don't know, when I turn on the national news, it's some political outrage. That's the first thing, or Gaza, or Ukraine, and then the next thing is the weather story, and up next, 30 million people in the path of the new storm going through Louisiana, and then the last thing is what my wife calls the puppy story, so that you don't lose any sleep, right? Yeah. She says, well, what was the puppy story tonight? And if you look at the local news, then it's the crime. You got murders in St. Paul, and here's the murders in Minneapolis tonight, and then you've got the weather, which is going to be cold again, and then you've got the sports, and the Twins have lost again. Although I think the Timberwolves won last night, didn't they? So that's some good news. Yeah, maybe that was the puppy story last night. Who knows? But often there's literally a puppy story, and so this gets us. I mean, for me, I end up after that. I'm just, you might as well throw my brain in the dumpster because I am so upset. And then I watch the late night news shows, the late night comedy shows, and relieve my anxiety by laughing at my enemies, as I said this morning, which doesn't really help. So you know where I'm coming from and why I think this is important and why I think we ought to be lifting it up and thinking about it. So let's hear from you now.
Thank you, Stephen. That was a great presentation. I'm sorry I missed Friday and Saturday, but I look forward to it. I'm reminded when we speak of we are one in Christ Jesus of Psalm 133, verse 1. Can I recite it in Hebrew?
Please, yes,
Hinei
please.
matova manayim shevet ahim gam yahad. How good and pleasant it is for brothers or people to dwell together in unity. I wondered if you saw any connection with that, especially in the Greek Septuagint.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I haven't explored that, Charles, but that's a very interesting idea. I should look at that. Absolutely. Yeah, this is not something that springs out of nowhere, right? This ancient creed is part of Jewish, a very important part of Jewish tradition, and so.
Extended to the Gentiles as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, Professor Patterson. As you can hear from my accent, I am a foreign-born U.S. citizen, and I have a question for you.
By the way, my wife is a foreign-born U.S. citizen.
From where, may I ask?
Well, she's from Canada, so she's not.
She's from where? Canada. Ah, Canada. Okay,
But
good.
my children are also foreign-born U.S. citizens, and they are from Russia.
Russia?
Yeah, they are Roma. They are
This
Russian.
is. I was Fulbright in Russia, but anyway, that's another story. What? I want to ask you something about Ephesians 11:1 in Christ, and as you know,
You'll
this
need to read this
passage,
for me. Yeah.
It's. Can you hear me?
No, just don't presume that I know the text.
Yeah, it starts with a reference to the circumcision and that everybody
Yes,
you have
okay,
made this
okay.
morning and
Yes,
everybody
yes, okay, yeah.
is one.
It's in
but
Colossians
then
and
he
Ephesians.
says, and he says many things in that text, but he talks about peace and about
Peace.
both being reconciled in God.
Yes.
And he says, so he came and proclaimed peace to you who were far off and peace to those who were near. For through him, both of us have access in one spirit to the Father. Mm-hmm. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens,
Yes.
but you are citizens with the saints and also members of the household of God, etc.
Yeah.
Now,
the
I
language of
realize-
that must be very meaningful to you.
yeah, and I realize that you are interested in the world. You made several references.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, why is it, or do you think it would be a good idea to link this text with your discussion of Galatians?
Absolutely, yes, yeah. So Ephesians and Colossians I regard as Deutero-Pauline letters. And so this is, in my view, a student of Paul or someone in the Pauline tradition creating a letter in Paul's name, probably using Colossians, by the way, as a source. So by this time, people are mining the letters of Paul for new insights. And so this is a beautiful elaboration of this basic creed that Paul appropriates. So we could follow this from the creed, the pre-Pauline creed. There is no Jew or Greek, slave or free, male and female, to Paul, who says, in Christ Jesus there is no slave or free, male and female. So to Ephesians, in Christ Jesus there is no Jew or Greek, slave or free. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Ephesians... Yeah, and then he goes on to say, you are citizens, you are not aliens, yes, you are at peace, yeah. I only wish that the author of Ephesians had kept the third piece of the third piece of the creed. There is no male and female, and so by that time, the Pauline tradition was beginning to back off that aspect of the creed, and for many people that is the most challenging thing, really, the gender aspect. Can we realize that there is no male and female? That's a very challenging thing. Yeah.
So what you are saying is Galatians was written by Paul,
Yes.
probably Ephesians not.
Correct. Yeah. It's a very common position in critical scholarship, and I hold it too. I'm not a specialist that can make those decisions by myself, but I'm convinced by the experts who have said this. Yeah. Thank
We
you.
have a couple of questions here.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed last Friday, but Friday you seem to almost get to there is no Greek or Muslim, because I think it's easy to talk about Judeo-Christian although now we Christians are butchering
Yes.
each other too, but
Yes.
because I take it what it means that we all have one God. We just look at him.
Yes, yes. Well, I take these three dyads, Jew or Greek, that's ethnicity, slave or free, class, male and female gender. I take that as an attempt to be all-encompassing of the kinds of ways we divide ourselves one from another. And you can fill in whatever two words you wish, because that's the point, right? That there is no us and them, especially when us is more powerful, our seen is more powerful than them, and or we have privilege to do things to them that they don't want to be done to. So it's an all-inclusive kind of attempt to erase the idea of us and them. Yeah. Yes, Ann.
I have kind of a
And
silly
let me say, Ann, thank you so much for all your hospitality. Ann Lewis has just been so wonderful in coordinating this event this weekend. And just been so kind and welcoming and facilitated so much. So thank you so much.
Yes, and now I'm just verklempt. That's not fair. Closer, okay. Oh, so this is kind of a silly question. In terms of Antioch,
Yes.
do you think it would have gone better if they'd known your work and had the Unforgotten Creed and said, God loves the circumcised and the uncircumcised, for we are all one in the Spirit? I mean, to me, that is a shift, as you probably know, and a shift that it seems useful to us to recognize. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes. No, I don't think it would have gone better if they knew my work. My work is highly theoretical. And, Paul, you read Paul, and there's so much to object to and so much to be offended by. Yeah. But on the other hand, I see this thing that he was trying to do in Antioch in the context in which he was trying to do it, and I'm thinking, wow, that's why he lasts. He's very, very courageous and dynamic and had a tremendous idea. So no, I don't. I think I don't. Yeah, no. He was doing his best and did some remarkable things. Yeah.
How much leeway do we have in interpretation? Can we take those words and interpret them for our time?
Of course, absolutely, yes. And like I say, these are. I think the person who coined this creed was intending for their time to say there is no us and them. Any way you want to divide the human community to your advantage and the disadvantage of them, don't do that. That's your thing. And so we must see it in our own day and time. We have to understand who is them for us. We are us, okay, I am us, I'm me. Who is my other? And whoever that is, that the creed is talking about that, yeah. Whether that's a Republican or a Russian or an alien from outer space. Yeah.
I'm a Freemason, and you have to believe in God to be a Mason. So we have Catholics and Protestants, Jews and Muslims in our lodge. And so on our altar we have the Holy Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. But you talk we have a Muslim brother who's from Egypt, and this was a couple of years ago. He said, there are countries I can't go to. If they found out which branch of Islam I'm from, they'd probably kill me.
Sure, yeah.
And you have what happened in Israel was horrible, but then you have ultra-right Jews who are persecuting Arabs on the West Bank, and in Northern Ireland you had Christians killing other Christians. So how that religious division really scares me, because it seems it gives you extra authority because God is on your side.
Yes.
And then it even it's now followed in politics here. I don't want to drag this out, but to show you how things have changed, when President Kennedy was assassinated, we had a day of mourning. The colonel that called us together in the was a Republican, but his speech was, "Our commander-in-chief has been brutally murdered, and today is a day of mourning, and if I hear of anybody being disrespectful, you're in trouble with me." Now, how do we go back to those kinds of days where we understand that we may disagree, but you're still part of the human family?
Yeah. Well, if I had the answer to that question, I would be, I may be running for office. But, you know, this is a problem with the human community, isn't it? In every place and every time, people have divided themselves one from another. And I don't know the answer to that question, why we do that, but I do know that one of the elements of that is trust. When we lose trust with one another, then that's what happens. And so that's why I'm saying today that Paul actually had a very good idea that a just person is someone who can trust. Someone who can trust God, all the things that God is, goodness, mercy, and love especially. And if you can learn to trust those things, that maybe we can begin to rebuild trust one with another. Yeah. And let me just add briefly, I think someone, in the introduction the other night, someone mentioned that my wife is a senator in Oregon. And so I'm up to this, every night. She's coming home and we have to debrief, And politics in Oregon is just as nasty as it is everywhere else, right? But she likes to remind me that, 90% of what they do in a bipartisan way. There are certain issues that really do divide, and they're important issues. Can't minimize them. But let's not forget that there are still avenues of working together, and there are people who are willing to do that. So for me, that's a sign of hope, and that there is still some trust that we can begin to build on. Yeah.
Okay, they're going to let me have the microphone. I'm not going to. The problem is the clergy. Now, before everybody faints and I go off in some heresy.
Scott, would you go and get coffee now?
We have supposedly in some branch of our Christianity where the people choose the pastors to reflect what they want to hear. Mm-hmm. And then we think, on the other hand, the pastors polarize people. Mm. And we seem to have a circle. Mm-hmm. Now, if everyone read this creed every Sunday and put it on the wall, we wouldn't have these problems. But somehow most of the wars are about religion. And they polarize and polarize and polarize.
Yeah.
I feel that we have to challenge our clergy, our leaders, to go back. And as Protestants, we are allowed to read the Bible ourselves, which is not most people. So I just think sometimes we have to hold our leadership to a higher standard. Like Paul said, I think Paul said it, that the leaders will be judged more harshly. Mm. But that's my 2 cents worth, is that
thank you.
We have blamed most of the world on the peasants rioting and saying wrong things, but they have either chosen the wrong leadership or the leadership has chosen the people that follow.
Thank you. I am not a clergy person. I've never been ordained. There's never been a church who would dare ordain me. But so I can maybe beg off on that criticism. On the other hand, I did educate clergy for over 20 years at Eden Seminary, so maybe I'm more responsible. But it's hard being a clergy person, and you have to really work hard not to create divisions in your own community. And so they have a tough job, and sometimes they don't do it all that well. But I have a tough job too, and I don't always do it very well either. So this is true of all of us. So, well, thank you for those comments.
Just a comment that Tim Alberta has written a really good book about the clergy and among our evangelical brethren and the position they've been put in. That might be interesting.
Who is
Tim Alberta.
Tim Alberta? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I've heard of
anyway,
him, yeah.
my question is, can you talk a little bit about this creed you're saying is ancient?
Yes.
And in 38,
Yes.
that would have meant it was very, very adopted immediately, let's say. Can you talk a little bit about why it fell out of favor, and then does that give us any clues as to how it can come back into favor?
So the terminus ante quem for the creed, that is the time before which it must have been in existence, is really the letter of Paul, the first letter of Paul to the Corinthians, so 1 Corinthians. And that's around 50, I suppose, late 40s, 50, 51, anyway. So it's about then. That gives you an idea of it has to be before then, because that's when Paul first references it. It's interesting that the creed, as I reconstruct it, doesn't have any reference to Jesus Christ. And so it's quite possibly what we would think of as a pre-Christian creed. Certainly is pre-Christian in the broad sense, because there are no Christians in 50. But it may come from a different kind of group. And I haven't written about this, but I do think that it's quite possible that this creed originally has its roots in the Baptist community, that out of which Jesus came and out of which many of the followers of Jesus came. And so I think it may have had its origins there. By the way, it's not the only early Christian baptismal creed. There's also one in Romans 6 that Paul references, and I think that's also a pre-Christian or pre-Pauline creed. So there are different ideas about baptism out there at the time, and so it is very early. How it came out of favor is, well, I think you know that as well as I do. It's very hard. It's a very simple creed, but it's very hard. To suspend our judgments about how the world is organized is extremely difficult. I struggle with this every single day. I do. I want the divisions to heal, right? I do. But every time I walk up to the person who's disagreeing with me, I realize I just want to win. So this is really difficult. Trust is not built easily. And so I think that's what happened to the creed.
Yeah. You know, sometimes I wonder, because, I was raised before we became electronic. And we're more encompassing of how you take a problem, and I run into this every day at work.
Yeah.
So I'm of the older generation.
Yeah.
And you take a problem from start to finish. You want to make sure you got a good outcome. But the kids today, a lot of them are taught,
These
just
kids
do
today.
that one piece. Yeah, they slice and dice. And I wonder if that doesn't happen, that we don't have the understanding and that we need to fully understand the situation. Look how long it took us to get a bill passed to get aid to Ukraine. That was crazy.
Yeah.
And my sisters and I talk about this quite frequently, that, because we understand, at least because we're older, we understand the pre-electronic way of doing things.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the electronic because the information overload is too intense.
Yeah.
But we don't dive deep anymore and
Yeah.
truly try to get to the cause of the issue and the understanding. And, we don't do those niceties, like I had the good fortune of, as a kid, my dad worked for the government, so.
I'm not checking my phone, I'm checking the time. Because I want to bring Elizabeth up for just a moment and see if you have any more questions for her. For those of you who are with us, Elizabeth made a wonderful presentation of some textual things she's working on that are quite interesting and possibly revolutionary. And so I want to bring her up and say how much I appreciated your work yesterday. And so if you have questions also for, are you willing to? Put, yeah. So.
When you use the word trust, what elements would you add to that process being developed or used? So would you use words like acceptance, peace, respect? What
Yes, of course, of course. All of those things, of course, and a big dose of courage. You know, I don't think that you really come to trust without a good deal of courage. And the opposite of trust is fear. So to face our fears, we do need courage. I think that's what I'm lacking most of the time when I can't trust. So, but you've asked a very challenging question, and challenges me to think about my words a little bit more. I mean, I think trust is, I guess that's self-explanatory, but of course it's not. It's not. The process, the actual mechanics of trusting, that's for the psychologists and the pastors to help us figure out. Thank you very much for that. Very.
Other questions? I'm sorry I missed your work. Could you summarize a little of what you did the previous days?
Sure. I'll try. So my work is on the manuscripts of the Gospel of John, and I published a study a few years ago that's focused on the world's oldest copy of John 11. It's called Papyrus 66. And in this oldest copy of John, the name Mary has been crossed out a couple of times. In the first time, the name Mary is changed to say Martha. And the second time, the woman's name is erased and split into the sisters, and all the verbs are changed from singular to plural. And that was my starting place. And then I have since looked at about 300 manuscripts of John in 5 languages. And Martha's presence is unstable throughout the entire transmission of John's gospel. So my thesis is that it's possible that Martha, the character in John's gospel, was sourced from Luke's gospel at a very early stage of the textual transmission. Because in Luke's gospel, Martha and Mary have this interaction with Jesus where Martha's serving, distracted, and Mary's listening at Jesus' feet. But they don't have a brother in Luke's gospel, and they're in the north, which is not where Bethany is. Bethany's in the south. So my thesis is, what if somebody who read Luke's gospel took Martha and put her into John's gospel so that she would utter the thesis statement of the Gospel of John? Right now, Martha says, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." The thing is that a lot of early Christians thought that Lazarus' sister Mary was Mary Magdalene. And we actually have one church father, Tertullian, who wrote in about 200 AD, around the time this papyrus was copied, who says that Mary confessed Jesus as the Christ. So the question is, was Martha taken from Luke and put into John for the purpose of making sure that Mary Magdalene doesn't utter the thesis statement in John's gospel? Because that would make her too threatening of a character, because then she's both the confessor of Jesus as the Christ, which is Peter's job in the other Gospels, and she gets the first appearance of the risen Jesus. So it's just a theory. We don't have any manuscripts where Martha's gone, but 1 in 5 of our Greek manuscripts, there's something funny happening around Martha, and you can reconstruct most of the chapter by cobbling a bunch of different manuscripts together with just Lazarus and Mary. So maybe Mary Magdalene was suppressed in John for the purpose of getting it into the canon. That's kind of my little elevator pitch.
Very good. Good elevator speech.
I just want to say this thing. Okay, I just wanted to say that it was recorded. Friday night and Saturday sessions were recorded, and they will be on our website. So you can go back and check that out.
And it's very similar to what he's saying, that there's, Professor Patterson is talking about how hard it is to have courage and to maintain maybe what this early Christian proclamation was of equality. And maybe the Gospel of John went out sort of with a sort of balance to the synoptic Gospels for women's roles, and the church lost its nerve. Maybe that's what it was. And so Martha was a solution to a problem that they didn't have the courage to transmit a gospel where the woman had this central role. And so now she's kind of divided up into 3 women to make her more manageable, Mary and Martha from Luke, plus Mary Magdalene. So that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about Christian origins and sort of the loss of nerve, the loss of courage, and do we have more courage today to try to recover that? I think that's what we're both talking about.
Well said, well put.
Do we, where?
What do you speak into that thing?
I couldn't repair a wheelbarrow. Do we realize how contradictory we are and how we contradict ourselves? I'm thinking of an old New Yorker cartoon where this woman appears before her priest and she feels that God has called her to the priesthood. And he says, "Nonsense, my child. Women have never held positions of importance in the Holy Mother Church. Your penance is to say 1,000 Hail Marys."
That's funny.
And that applies in a lot of ways. I read a book about Muhammad, and the reason he went from Mecca to Medina was because his wife had inherited, she was a widow, and they were trying to take property away from her, and he was fighting for women's rights. But then if you go to Saudi Arabia, look how women are treated. So, even in other religions, we seem to forget the basic teachings of the religion. How do we change that?
I want to honor our time this morning. It's now 11:50, and I assume that the 11:45 time is so that you can get to brunch before the Catholics do down the street.
Sorry.
Am I right about that? Yeah, I think that's probably. So if you're shifting in your seats, yeah, it is about time. Let's take one more question, and then we'll ask Scott to wrap it up.
Not necessarily a question, but I love your sermon and I love your benediction. There's a lot of trouble in the world, as we all know, but we have resources, as you mentioned. And one of those very important ones is love. And love, of course, is mentioned in all the religions. There's a beautiful picture in today's paper. It's near the editorial page. It's in Ukraine. This poor old lady's house got bombed yesterday or something, and the neighbor lady comes over, and she's giving her a great big kiss as this woman is leaving her house that she lived on forever. It's about to collapse. So love is a wonderful resource.
Even in the midst of heartbreak, there's that bit of hope. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to thank both of you for being here over the course of the weekend. It was absolutely wonderful. We've all benefited from your presence and your teachings, and safe travels home. And hopefully you'll think nice thoughts about House of Hope in the future.
Oh, absolutely. It's been such a wonderful experience. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.